Yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A where I'm going to be answering your catamaran sailing questions. Oh, yes. So I think I'm just going to steam straight in. You can see I've prepared a very informative board, and this is to answer Daniel's question, which is the lead question for today, incidentally, which is which single-handed catamaran to go for. And not going to lie to you, there is a world of choice out there, but this world of choice is combined with what is available in your price range and what is actually being sold in your kind of region, because it's all good and well saying, okay, you should be looking to get yourself a Stealth as a really good single-handed catamaran, but I don't think you'll find many Stealths outside of the UK. And if you happen to be in Texas or New Zealand, then that's not going to do you much good. So I think the first thing is, are you looking to buy a new boat? In which case, new boats are a little bit less abundant than they used to be. So that is also, it's almost like you've got as much choice with new boats as you do with old boats. Oh, and then I missed one section, which would be foiling, because there will be new foiling boats available, because they are, whatever's new, cutting edge and trending is going to be available. That is the theory anyway. So given that, you need to be able to find the boat which we're going to talk about and get it to your sailing venue. So that is a consideration. So, but we'll go through this. So we've got two categories: dedicated single-handed boats and non-dedicated single-handed boats. So that is kind of like boats which have been designed as a double-handed boat, but they work pretty well or extremely well as a double-hander. Yeah. Okay, so on the dedicated single-handed boats, the first and most striking of the list has got to be the roto-molded Hobie Wave. Yeah, this and the Hobie Wave would come into the category of, yes, there are plenty of boats available second-hand. If you start looking around for a second-hand Hobie Wave, second-hand is, for those of you not getting my dialect, second-hand means used. So you're buying a used one, pre-loved. Yeah, there should, in theory, be many Hobie Waves around to buy, which have already been used before. So that makes that, firstly, that gets that a tick. No, I'm not going to start ticking the board. Why would I do that? The second thing with the Wave is extremely simple and straightforward to sail. It's just got a mainsail, very simple rig, very simple setup. There are very few parts on the Hobie Wave that can go wrong, and it's made of the roto molded plastic, which means it's pretty much maintenance free. All you need to do is wash it after you've gone sailing, and then probably a good idea to drop the mainsail as well. But then, yeah, she's going to last you for a very long time. So that is what is in the plus points for the Wave. Yeah, it will get you out on the water nicely, and you'll have a nice time. But with a boat like the Hobie Wave, you're not going to get, if you are seeking high performance, the Hobie Wave in catamaran terms isn't going to be getting you that high performance kind of characteristics. And in fact, we could also have had the category the inflatable, which the inflatable boats do a very similar job to the Hobie Wave, except they're even more practical when it comes to storage, because they generally, most of them will pack down into 2 bags, which you'd be able to store in your garage. If you live in central Paris, you'd be able to store them under your bed, that kind of thing. Take them to the lake on your bicycle. Probably not safe to do that. Yeah, so the inflatable boats are an option as well. But then if we get into a bit more juice, then the asymmetric hull shape boats, fiberglass. Now, the 2 most prevalent asymmetric hull shape boats that you're going to find dedicated to single-handed are going to be the Hobie 14 and the Prindle 15. More Prindles in the USA than in Europe, but not sure about Australia, whether there are many Prindles made it down there. If you know, let us know, because we need to know. But the Hobie 14, quite a challenging boat to sail, but extremely well built, very strong, and it has really, really nice performance when the wind starts getting a bit stronger. Fairly tricky on the tacking, that's for sure, and very easy to stall. But with things that are more difficult, there is always a way to make it work. And the way to make it work is to work on your technique. And finally, for me, having now sailed in the US Nationals in the Hobie 14 and done quite a few videos on why can't I tack my 14, I finally got to grips with it. And which means that if you were going to start sailing a Hobie 14, especially without the jib, then there's now this resource that I've put together in video format, which you can tap into, and then you'll know exactly what I know after I've put in the work to find out how to do it. Does that seem fair? I hope so. Yeah, then the Prindle 15, more volume, which means less prone to capsizing, still high performance, great fun to sail, but a lot easier to sail than the 14. But very good choices. But the 14, especially here, like you could put also as a tick point, would be, can you take a second crew member with you if you decide you do want to take someone for a sail? I would say the Hobie 14, you definitely don't want to be sailing with more than about 110 kilograms on board, because it's going to make the boat very difficult to sail, because the hulls are extremely low volume, whereas the Prindle, you'll still be able to sail with a reasonable amount of weight on board. I would say probably up to about 140 kilos. All right, so then yeah, so extremely durable, still extremely durable, although fiberglass. Then when we get down to here, the Dart 15 Skeg hull design. The Dart 15 does do almost exactly the same thing as the Hobie 14. The standard format for the Dart 15 is just with the mainsail, but if you want either a bit more performance, or if you were going to sail with a second person, then you can add a jib just to give it a little bit more sizzle and give it a bit more performance. Yeah, so there is for pretty much everything. You could put a jib on a Wave, on a 14, on a Prindle 15. Yeah, so the Dart 15, much easier to sail than the asymmetric hold boats. So there is a reason behind this, and that is generally because the asymmetric hold boats were some of the earlier designs of beach catamaran, and this was the first kind of design that came along, which was great for performance, but for ease of use, not quite so good. Whereas the slightly later designs with the Skeg hull are much easier to use because you've got this central pivot point. The other great thing with the Dart 15, no boom. If you like it a bit easier getting across the boat, then not having a boom is certainly going to make it easier. Hobie 14 has been known to upset people with how tricky it is to get across the boat because the boom is pretty low. And that goes for the Hobie 16 as well. Now, fresh in, we've got the Nacra 500, a new favorite of mine. And yeah, so this is a much more modern design. It again does the same thing, just nicer, more refined, because so much time and development has passed since boats like the Dart 15, so that the kind of, what would you call them, like the pain points that you felt with these older boats, they've been addressed, changed, developed. So now the more modern boats, there is of course the Nacra 500 Mark 1, and before that the Nacra 5.0, which again will all be great choices. Before anyone jumps in and says there's about 120 boats that you haven't listed there, well, there's a reason behind that. I didn't want the list to be too big, so I'm just selecting the most kind of prevalent boats as far as I can tell. Yeah, Nacra 500, all of them very well built, very well designed. Of course, the more modern boats are going to be more user friendly with more performance, perhaps less prone to capsizing a bit as well. Not that these sort of boats, any catamarans, are prone to capsizing. Like the Hobie 14 on the whole list is probably the easiest boat to capsize due to these low volume hulls. So very easy to stick the nose in. Yeah. All right. I've just seen Leland Lee in the live chat said the biggest factor when getting a single-handed boat is, can you right it after capsize by yourself? Yeah, so that's a very good point. So the smaller boats, definitely you should be able to right them by yourself if you have got a bit of wind. A bit of wind makes it so much easier to right the capsized boat. Now, the Topcat coming from Germany. Yeah, so for that reason, you might not find very many Topcats in the USA, but they have quite an extensive range of boats from over the years. So there's definitely something in the Topcat range which would be a dedicated single-hander. And again, doing a very similar job to all the rest of the Skeg hull boats. But I would say, perhaps without any actual information to back it up, I would say the Topcat looks a bit more heavier built than the Nacra and the Dart as far as the Skeg hull boats are concerned. And then there is a few 14-footers that hail from Australia, such as the Windrush and the Minicat and the Calypso, I believe. And they all basically, if we'd done like a an evolutionary ladder of where the designs came from, they would come quite close after the Hobie 14, having taken quite a similar looking design, added volume to the hulls, but still with the raised trampoline, because one thing that people sailing in waves or chop really don't like with certain catamarans is when you're going in a fair bit of wind, the waves hitting the back beam, which forces the bows down. So it's very nice to have that raised trampoline so that doesn't happen. So there's a number of these Australian classes which are really good choices as a first single-handed catamaran. And to be honest, I don't know how many of these boats have made it to the rest of the world, but I'm sure the Windrush boats have made it to the States at least. Oh, thank you. All right, continuing. And then as we go up the scale of, we're coming down the scale of durability, it kind of goes, durability goes down, performance goes up, if you know what I mean. So the Dagger board style boats. So as I said, and the Stealth and the F-17, if you're not sure about the F-17, I'll tell you, both of these boats quite similar in that single-handed Dagger boards and asymmetric spinnaker. So a pretty sophisticated, high-performance piece of kit, a bit more lightweight for the size. These boats are, the Stealth and the F-17 are going to be more difficult or require more weight to bring them up after the event of a capsize. So there are methods that have been actually manufactured by the manufacturer to help you bring these sorts of boats up. That generally being some sort of pivot writing pole that is on like a hinge under the front beam, where you just, it hinges out, then you go to the end, you pull it, boat comes upright. Lovely old job. So both of these quite similar, but a bit more heavyweight. Whereas we've got the acat or A-class catamaran, two different versions, the classic or the low rider, which is a traditional catamaran, dates back to the 1960s. Dagger boards, not particularly wide, which means to get the acat going, to get out on the trapeze on the A-class, you don't need so much wind because the boat is more narrow. If you think of a narrow base, tall rig, that's going to want to tip over much easier than a wide base, short rig. Does that make sense? I think so. Yeah, so the A-class, but the thing with the A-class boats is they are definitely the most fragile on the list. So that is definitely a consideration. The other consideration which we must consider is handling the boat on land as well. So like I would have to say the F-17, sorry, yeah, the F-17 is either the FX1 or Nacra, sorry, Inter, well, it's a Nacra, Inter 17. And both of these boats are going to be the worst for actually being able to pull the boat out of the water on your own unassisted. So definitely worth a consideration. Okay. So non-dedicated, because like, as we know, if you're looking on the second-hand catamaran market, you're going to find more Hobie 16s around than anything else, just because more Hobie 16s have been built than every other single catamaran put together, which means that it makes sense that there's going to be more Hobie 16s available. Now, the Hobie 16 does make a great single-handed boat up to a certain amount of wind, which depends on your weight and your experience. So a Hobie 16 for, let's say, somebody 75 kilos would be manageable up to about 15 knots of wind. Above that, it's going to start getting a bit testy, and you're definitely not going to be able to bring it up from a capsize on your own without some sort of piece of mechanical engineering under the boat. I think in my testing, you need 120 kilos to bring a Hobie 16 up from capsized in 0 wind. So for me, that means I can use the capsized writing bag. But if you're lighter, you might need a pole and perhaps a bag as well. All right, so the Hobie 16, yeah, great fun, great power to weight ratio. And this is really going to pick up speed and get going very early on. And you're going to be able to pick them up cheaper than pretty much anything else. But what we've been laughing about is there's no such thing as a cheap boat. The cheaper the boat is, the more money you might have to spend on it. The Prindle 16, similar kind of story there. But both of these boats do carry the weight much better because they are designed as double-handed boats, as is the Dart 18. But the Dart 18 was designed, same with the F16s, actually. They're both designed so that you can sail with 2 people, but by leaving the jib behind, you can then sail evenly as a single-hander. So these are the true convertibles, the Dart 18 and the Formula 16, most versatile. Formula 16, bit expensive and technical as well. So it will be the same as these Spinnaker Dagger board boats, except more modern, so you're spending more money on it. But the Dart 18, again, no boom, makes it easier to get across the boat. You're less likely to whack your head on something solid, and great fun to sail. But the darts are much more fragile than everything else which is above the line. Just something to consider. And then finally on the list here, we've got the Nacra 15, which I've just had a go on myself, and I thought it was absolutely tremendous fun. Oh, yes. So much fun. But this fun does come at a premium price because the Nacra 15 is still I think they've only been around really about 10 years. And the second-hand, which means second-hand boats are holding their value really well. So the chance of finding a used Nacra 15 for less than, let's say, 7,000 units of currency is going to be pretty slim. Even that might be a little bit tricky to find. But great fun. And the Nacra 15 is going to be the first boat that we're mentioning in this section as the FCS, the full carbon. I should have asked while I was at Nacra, what does this actually stand for? Foiling carbon sexy. Yeah. So the Nacra 15 is a full convertible. A lot of the F16s are convertibles as well, which means you can swap out the actual slots where the Dagger boards go and convert them into full foiling boats. Very nice. But some dedicated foilers would be, cool, this is a test, the UFO, I believe. What was the other one? Okay, put it in the live chat and we'll come back to that. Oh, I'm missing the shadow. Yes, thank you, Nutsy. The shadow and the stealth doing quite a similar job. All right, but yeah, as single-handers, you know, there's of course the single-handed foiling A class as well. Gosh, the name has completely eluded me of the one that was in the presentation. Yeah, for more detail on all this, I did put out back in probably start of March 2 videos called the Catamaran Knowledge, where I explain about, as far as I could tell, a lot, definitely a lot of different classes of catamarans. So do check that out. But there you go. There is a quick overview of choices. Yeah, just gonna have a drink. And into the live chat we go. Oh, yes. All right. And we're starting off with channel member Bobby. Hi, Bobby. Great to have you on board, both on board and on board as a channel member. All right. And Bobby's in with a question. Do you know why championship regattas do not allow Hobie 16 sailors to sail single-handed, even if they can meet the minimum weight requirement with a small amount of additional weight? Now, that is a very, very good question. It's a question that doesn't get asked very much. Like, it's just taken for granted almost that classes like the Hobie 16, you have to sail with 2 people on board, because that's just the way it's always been in the kind of international and national championship regattas. But you're absolutely right. It makes complete sense, and it would boost the attendance at events if events opened up to sailors, perhaps slightly heavier sailors, because I think minimum weight limit for a Hobie 16 is between 120 and 125. So if you're in that kind of arena on your own, then why shouldn't you be able to sail the boat single-handed? Surely there's not so much, there's not benefits to it. In fact, I would say there's only hindrances. If you could have 2 people, half the weight, coming in at minimum weight, then that means you've got 2 pairs of hands, 2 sets of eyes looking everywhere. You've got 2 minds to choose about strategic choices. So why shouldn't the heavier sailors be able, if they can meet minimum weight, why shouldn't they be allowed to race single-handed? I agree with you, Bobby, but the actual answer of why, I think it goes back to tradition, class rules, and there's probably maybe an element of safety in there as well for these classes, maybe. But then how can you argue that if, like, say there's the multiple class Hobie regattas each year where they have the Hobie 16s, the 14s, and other classes, and if you've got 120 kilo sailor solo on a 16, they're going to have just as much chance to bring the boat up, probably more, because they're likely to be taller, than 2 60 kilo sailors. So why not, apart from tradition and sticking to the class rules, maybe there is something written, actually in some pretty thick ink that says this is a double-handed boat. But yeah, agreed. What do you think, everybody else? Either put it in the live chat or put it in the comments. What do you think? I think it does make sense. And these days, when all events are really trying to get as much attendance as possible, because there's not as many people sailing catamarans as there used to be, or don't know if that's actually true. We'll see. But that is what I believe anyway. If you want more people to come to events, make the rules slightly more flexible, kind of like what they did with the wave class in the USA, because the wave class, the actual Hobie wave class, very strict on what equipment you can use. You have to use the original mainsail, all the original equipment. But then in the USA, the Formula Wave class was born, which makes it much more flexible. So if somebody can't actually get hold of a replacement sail from Hobie Cat for their wave, they could get a sail made by, I think, pretty much any, correct me if I'm wrong, any sail maker for the wave, and then compete in the Formula Wave class, which incidentally, I'm going to be racing in November this year in the Hobie Alta Cup in Corpus Christi, Texas at the start of November. So if you're a Hobie Wave sailor in the USA, be great to see you there. And in fact, at this point, I'm just going to let you know other news just in this week is it's now confirmed that at the start of August, I'm going to be sailing on Lake Como, Italy, at the Nacra 50th anniversary regatta. I'm going to be sailing in the Formula 18 class on an Evolution. That's nice. Yeah, I'm quite happy about that. But it's for any Nacras of any age. If you can make it to Lake Como, Italy, start of August, then it'll be pretty easy to find the entry form online, where you just fill in the entry form, say you're going to go, and then arrive, and we'll have a lovely old time. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's for sure. All right. So back into the live chat. All right, Leland Lee is he's actually over on the start line this time, but he's doing a 360 to exonerate himself, which, by the way, on a start line, that wouldn't work. There'd be other rules in place. It might be around the ends rule on this particular start line. So there you go. Nice to have you with us. So Hanny is on board in Amsterdam. Hello, Hanny. Channel member, Hanny. That's why if you're in the live chat and you're looking at the live chat, that's why certain people have got green writing and exciting emojis. Now, one of other news just in, one of the benefits of being a channel member, as well as supporting Joyrider TV, it means you get early access to videos. So basically, as soon as I upload the video, channel members are able to view them straight away, whereas everybody else has to wait to the advertised launch time, which would usually be at 6:30 Greek time on a Sunday, Tuesday, or Thursday. That's what I'm going for these days, in case you hadn't spotted it. So coming out on Sunday, channel members can see it already, is the latest speed stick update video. And I would have to say this one is definitely worth a watch. There we go. All right. Channel member Ryan is on board. In fact, Hanny says 29 days for me, then back in Vasiliki. And Ryan, I think, might be hitting Vasiliki Lefkas Greece at a similar time, coming all the way from Maui to taste some of this Greek honey that we have out here. It's going to be absolutely wild to see you when you get here, Ryan. After seeing the Nacra 15, that's what I'm thinking. I'm assuming you're either thinking that looks expensive or that looks like a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun. Got Ivan on board. Thanks for all your invaluable information. Yes, you're very welcome. Lee says, oh yeah, we did that one. Then we have Nutsy. Nice to have you with us, Nutsy. Thanks for your thoughts on the Harken 12-1 last week. But you're missing the Shadow X as a good single-hander on your list. Yeah, the Shadow... Or am I actually thinking of the Shadow when I wrote the Stealth? I don't think so. The Shadow is like the small version of the, let's get this right, the Shockwave, whereas the Stealth is like the single-handed version of the Spitfire. All right, if you can let me know if that is correct there, Nutsy, that would be great. All right, Luke is with us. Are there any common foiling cats for single or handed? Yeah, I think of the kind of more, the less dedicated catamarans, the F16, like the Viper or the Nacra F16, or even the Nacra 15 FCS, they go for 2 people or for 1 person, and they are available as foiling boats. There we go. All right, Lee says the UFO by Fulcrum. Indeed. Yeah, I think we did mention that in the foiling category. A-class. All right. There we go. Nutsy says the A-class is the most common foiling single-handed catamaran by far. Yeah. The A-class world and I think the European championships, the fleet is pretty much divided in half, with half of the boats sailing lowrider or non-foiling, and the other half is the foiling half. Generally about 60 boats in each fleet. So that is a huge amount of foiling boats on the race course. All right. So, yeah, Nutsy says the Viper F16 and the Nacra 15 with available with foiling kits. All right, and Lee's in there. I've single-handed my Hobie 16 in 20 knots. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not possible. And in fact, there may be something coming next week to show that it's definitely possible. But it just requires a little bit of something extra. I think for the uninitiated, sailing a Hobie 16 in 20 knots might seem a bit fierce for a lot of people, because those are some big sails on there. Over 20 square meters for 1 person is a lot of sail to manage. Granted, you can reef the mainsail. Granted, you could leave the jib at home. But still, yeah, if you did that, actually, it'd be quite sensible. In fact, I'm going to do a video, super high wind, Hobie 6. I've probably done this already, to be honest. I can't even remember. Hobie 16, no jib with a Hobie 14 mainsail. How about that? Hey, we've got Max on board. Rosenheim, Germany. Great single-hander is a Taipan 4.9, originally from Australia. 3 sails up, 104 kilograms, and Max loves the boat. There we go. Oh, wow. Okay, Bobby is 6'8" tall. And I'm just converting this into kilos. And 150. Why can't you race? If you are minimum weight, 6 do the sit. So Dirk is with us from Ottertail Lake, Minnesota. Dirk, who we saw with the Hobie 21 SE in a recent edition of Show Us Your Cat. Nice to have you with us, Dirk. All right, so Nutsy says the Shadow is the small version of the Spitfire. It's made out of Kevlar and very light. And the Shockwave is the F-18 version of the Spitfire. All right. All designed by Reg White. So, so yes, the Stealth is the one was designed or built at least by John Pierce, which is quite a different thing. Beg your pardon. All right, we've got Kuhn on board. Kuhn, who I was sailing with in Show Us Your Cat, the special from Cat Club Brownissa last week. Yeah, nice to have you with us, Kuhn. Good to have you checking in as we all are doing. All right, so I think we're done there with the which boat chat. Very good. And we're going to come on to the next question, preloaded question. Okay, and this one is, all right, it's a similar question, actually. This is from Endidalipaj, I believe. Sorry. He says, I've been sailing 2 years in monohulls and want to try sailing catamarans. What do you suggest to start with? Yeah, I would say, again, it's what is available. Everything is going to work reasonably well, but I would certainly not go for a boat with a centerboard or a dagger board. So we'll get rid of that one. And if possible, I would start with a Skeg hull designed boat. The ones that are the most kind of frequently occurring, especially at rental places and schools, depending on where you are, would be the Hobie Wave and the Getaway. But also any of the roto molded boats like the Dart 16, the RS cats, the Topaz cats, the whole range of Hobie roto molded boats would all be excellent boats for your first go in a catamaran. But pretty much anything that we've mentioned, which were in the Skeg hull department from before, from the single-handed boats, would be appropriate as a first catamaran to start with, I think. A few features which will make your life easier, as well as the Skeg hull. We want ideally to have a boat which doesn't have a boom as well, like the Hobie 15. You know, people say it's not the most beautiful boat on the beach, but what it does, now that makes it a beautiful boat. Yeah, it's such a user-friendly boat for somebody who hasn't sailed catamarans very much before. All right, so next question is from Lunar12. Hello, me and my dad have got a Hobie 16, and I was curious, Hobie 16, what is your preference between having the mast leaned back in more of an Aussie style or having it leaned more forwards? Okay, yeah, I think it's pretty much got to the stage, especially with modern boat, the modern 16 is to have the mast further back these days. So I'm definitely not having the mast forwards kind of guy. Yeah, so how, without actually going into any measurements, would I quantify how far back I prefer to have the mast? I prefer to have the mast so that when the rig tension is on, like full, that I, with two hands, can't get it block to block. So, so when this is not a Hobie 16 block, but never mind. So that when I'm pulling it together, it ends up with about that much gap in between. And that is how I would very quickly and easily quantify how much mast rake I like on the boat. And then when the wind gets up, we'll loosen the rig off a little bit, and then it should be like one strong arm pull gets the blocks all the way together like that. Yeah, of course, that is going to depend slightly on whether your sails are old or new. If you've got really old sails, they're going to have stretched over time, which is going to make that easier. But all right, so what is too far back to have your mast? And in fact, I did encounter this a little bit yesterday when I did actually go out for a sail on a 16. Is how can I draw this? Depends what I'm trying to draw, you may say. All right, if this is our mast step like that, then we've got a bit more than that. The bottom of the mast, obviously not in the step. This is just for the purposes of explaining what I'm on about. And then what have we got? We've got at this end of the mast, there's like a nose that comes down to make it easier when you're putting the mast up or down. And here you've got a bit that kind of up here, you've got a bit that kind of sticks out where that locates into for raising or lowering the mast. So I would say the maximum amount of dark mast rake that you can have, and I really would suggest the maximum amount of mast rake when it is windy. I really would. And I would. It makes everything easier. But too much mast rake is when you put it back so far that this piece catches on the mast base when you're changing tack. So that will actually prevent the mast from rotating. So that is how you know if you've got too much mast rake on. And the other way that you'd know that you have too much mast rake on is if you can sheet in block to block without any effort at all. And that means if it's too far back, you won't get any tension in the leech of the sail. If it's too far back, what that is also going to do is make it much more difficult for you to turn the boat downwind or get away from head to wind after attack. So perhaps if you feel that your boat is really hard to tack, like you can get it head to wind, but after that, you really struggle to get it away from the wind, it might be that your mast is too far back. And when the mast is to the back, what it's doing is trying to drive the boat up into the wind. So that is another factor. But the opposite would be if you have your mast too far forwards, what you'll feel is in the light winds, you'll feel like you have loads of power, which is great. Okay, so having the mast more upright in light winds, yeah, that is something that we do. But when the wind gets stronger, what you'll feel on the upwind sailing, if the mast is too far forwards, is every time you get going, the boat's really going to want to fly the hull, but it's not going to feel like it wants to go faster. Whereas if you let the mast come back a bit, when you get going, when you're in the strong winds, the boat is just going to accelerate. It's going to be much better. It's going to feel better on the rudders. Everything's going to be better. But also sailing the boat downwind with the mast too far upright is going to put too much weight over the front of the boat, and your boat is going to become a bit of a pitch pole express. Quite exciting, I would guess. Okay, there we go. I hope that is a very good answer. All right, we've now been going for 50 minutes, would you believe? So if anybody in the live chat has any more questions, the question has to be accompanied buy a super sticker. That is the rules. I don't make the rules, except I do. All right. So there's one from Slowed 1693. After experiencing the 500, would you take that over a Hobie 16? I can tell you, if the 500 sells anything like the older 5.0, you'll have a blast in higher winds. Yeah, I could tell you one thing. I would absolutely love to get a Nacra 500 Mark II to sail in Vasiliki Bay. Vasiliki, Left Coast Greece, where I sail, where most of the videos come from, is probably the easiest place to sail fast in the world. I'm gonna throw that out there. With the consistency of the conditions, the flat water, and yeah, that's it. Strong wind, flat water, consistent conditions. It's really just, it's almost like it's been built for sailing fast. Granted, some of these canals, like can't remember where, is it called La Torche? Something like that. Would be a very good place for getting really high speed out of your boat, but it would not be much good for anything else because it's a canal. Whereas here, very good. So Nacra 500 here, put some mast rake on that bad boy, take it out in 25 to 30 knots of wind, and see what she's got. That's the business that I'm in, is the see what she's got business. Yeah. So I think let's say the only real negative point with the Nacra 500, or actually now think about it, there's more than one. First negative point will be this is compared to the Hobie 16. And this goes for any boats which have actually we don't need to do that. We can just do that. Which have a raised trampoline versus a not raised trampoline, is this issue that I was talking about earlier with the back beam getting hit by the waves. So with the Nacra 500, you're going to get more of that back beam hit by the waves than you would do on the Hobie 16. That is number one. Number two, the downside of the 500 compared to the 16 is there's so many 16s around, easier to get hold of a used one. There we go. Hobie 16 is also proven to be extremely strong. There we go. Whereas I'm not saying the 500 isn't extremely strong, but the but it hasn't had the same level of exposure as the Hobie 16. So I know there's different versions of the Nacra 500 which have been around, and I'm sure they are extremely strong, but the Hobie 16 has got a really, really strong proven track record. Then everything else, and of course, the other downside against the 16 is the Hobie 16, that the 16 is the fastest non-foiling catamaran out there. And, we could argue, yes, the Tornado, the Formula 18, all of these boats, very quick, but as has been proven over years of research, that on a very strong wind, 30 knots, double trapeze, broad reach, the Hobie 16 will go faster than everything else. And that is that. So, that is, I'm not going to take any objection to that statement. Although if anyone has got objection, I will accept it. Yeah, so that is the pro points for the 16, whereas the negative points or the pro points for the 500 would be much easier to get across the boat. Just everything about it easier. The 16 is, because it's an old design, it's a bit clanky. You know, it's not made to be super easy to use. Yeah, so the 500 just easier all round. Smaller sails on the 500 as well, and the new 500 with the rolling jib, rolling spinnaker, that is absolutely magic, I thought. But I would feel there's a big hole in my life if I never sailed a Hobie 16 again. So whereas the Nacra 500, I'd like to, but it hasn't got me quite as hard as the 16, because there's nothing like taking the 16 down the mine shaft when the breeze is on. All right, there we go. Back into the live chat just to finish. Lee says, more forward for more power. Insert Tim Allen grunt here. All right, Declan is with us, channel member Declan. Glad I caught you all just in from sailing. Was gusting up to 30 knots, 17.4 just with the mainsail. Oh, let's just check if that is an improvement. Oh yeah, that's an improvement. I can do that for you now, Declan. Just to give you, I'm at the computer. Would you believe 17.4 on the Getaway? Very nice. Okay, and that is a notch up for Declan. D Nixter is with us. Super helpful tip on rake settings. Thank you for that. Yeah, very welcome. Declan says, I would have been here earlier, but I flipped the boat. I'm not saying that it was the wing foilers, but there were wing foilers involved. Yes, sometimes traffic makes everything more difficult. I think there's no denying that. Okay, so I think that is about the size of it. As I said before, speed stick update video on Sunday. And oh yeah, more news just in is that Wildwind Sailing Holidays, which is where all the videos are based from, has just had 2 cancellations last minute, which means if you're able to jump on an airplane to fly to Greece either tomorrow or Sunday, then yes, there is availability. And not only that, gets better, but I am teaching a Catamaran intensive training week starting on Monday. This will be in Hobie Tigers, and it'll be 2 days boat handling, 2 days race training, and if it's windy in the afternoons, we'll just be focusing on whatever is the most what would the word be, appropriate in the strong winds, which might just be boat handling in the strong winds, maybe finishing the week with some strong wind racing. But that is going on from Monday to Thursday next week. So if you're able to jump on an airplane and head out, then just go on the Wildwind website. That's wildwind.co.uk, and find the phone number from there, phone somebody and say, yes, please. And then I'll see you this weekend. All right. Nice one. So have a great weekend. If you are going out sailing, have a great time. Get on the speed stick and keep it safe. Thank you very much for coming. I'll see you soon. Sunday speed stick video.